You were listening to the Battle Ready podcast. My name is Aaron McManus, and I'm here with my dad, Erwin Raphael McManus.
It's so good to be here with you today.
I'm really excited. We do a thing called McManus on the Hillsong channel.
Yes.
And this is kind of the follow-up to our Consumerism and Christmas episode that they released this last week.
And then on top of that,
Yes.
Netflix has a documentary coming out
Oh, what's it called?
in a couple of days
Oh, what's it called?
with the Minimalists.
Ooh, I like them.
I love them. And so I'm going to give a shout out. Go watch the documentary when it comes out in a
Yes.
week or so.
Yes.
Their first one, I think over 20 million people watched it
Yeah.
on minimalism.
You are in the trailer.
I'm in the trailer.
for
I'm
the second-
also in the film.
Yeah, you're in the film. Yeah.
I love these guys. And
They're really
and-
awesome.
And so I thought it'd be a great conversation to talk about how is it possible that I would be one of the featured people on a documentary on minimalism. I would be on the Hillsong channel talking about consumerism. And I would also be the founder of a company that starts a high-end luxury fashion brand.
Yes.
Are those things irreconcilable?
Well, the funny thing was, some of the great guys from the team at Hillsong were sending me were posting the stories of the clips for this week's episode
Right.
on consumerism and Christmas, and I responded with a joking response because they would never make fun of us, but I know they're all thinking it. And I said, "Oh, you mean the episode of the two hypocrites? You started a high-end luxury fashion company," and with a crying emoji, and they all just started laughing. But I said that jokingly, but I know people are thinking that.
Yes.
And so can you break us down? Because if you're new to this, or if you're just listening to this episode and you haven't listened to the last couple episodes, just a season recap.
Mm-hmm.
We have launched a brand, Erwin Raphael McManus, high-end luxury.
Mm-hmm.
We have some lower price point stuff, more manageable.
Mm-hmm.
But, the most expensive jacket is $32.50, and that's a beautiful parka, handmade in Los Angeles, California.
Made of vintage, repurposed World War II canvas half shelters.
I could not even give you a price on how invaluable
Yeah.
they are. So we've started that. We've also done episodes on consumerism and Christmas. We've also are talking. You're on the new Netflix movie, the second installment on The Minimalist, which is all about being minimal and throwing away stuff. And
Minimalism, yep.
And then we were also, and maybe the most important thing that we get to do is we get to be a part of our church, Mosaic, and on the lead teams there and being pastors there. And so,
And Mosaic is my sanity. I love you, Mosaic. You are my family, my community, my tribe. Thank you for giving me a place to be me.
and we have just the best people. And so, here we are. We're going to break this down. And by we, I mean you.
And I'm going to jump several different places along the way, but I want to highlight three words before we dive into the specifics.
Okay.
I am for ideas. I am for ideals, but I am adamantly, passionately against ideologies. And I think that
Can you explain why first?
Yeah.
Why? Let's go work backwards. Why are you against ideologies?
well, I have to go to the other ones to get to the ideologies.
No, but why are you against ideologies? Just
Ideologies are the extensions of ideas and ideals where now you're imposing how to live those out for everyone. And so when you have an idea that the world can be a place where everyone has a chance to live a beautiful life. That's an idea. Your ideal would be, that everyone would move toward compassion. Everyone would move toward integrity. Everyone would move toward generosity. And I'm a person of ideas. I love ideas. I think human history is advanced through ideas, that every culture that values ideas actually has a distinct advantage over every other culture that does not. And the same way, every company that values ideas, every family that values ideas, and it's actually a rare thing when ideas are valued and allowed to be expressed freely. Not every idea is good. Not every idea can actually be practically applied, but I love a world of ideas. And we do this thing called the Strength Finder. And my number one strength is something called futuristic, and my number two is called ideation. So I'm a person with 1,000 ideas all the time, and I realize most of my ideas will never see the light of day, but I love dreaming. I also am a person who has a high value for ideals. I think ideals are aspirational. I think ideals are the the phantom pain of the soul, the fact that human beings can imagine a world with peace, or imagine a world of justice, or imagine a world where everyone has food, or there's no poverty, there's no violence. Those ideals are interesting to me because we've never experienced any of those. We've never had a world fully at peace. We've never had a world where everyone had justice. We've never had a world where there was no poverty. And so these ideals are in the same category as our idea of God. And when people say, well, why do we believe in God? I go, well, then why do we believe in ideals? Because ideals are not only something that we've never experienced, all of human history tells us those ideals cannot exist. And yet, even that statement doesn't resonate with me because I believe they can. And because there's something inside of me that drives me toward human ideals and personal ideals. The problem is when it becomes an ideology, when we take ideas and ideals and now we try to superimpose on other people how they should live.
Can you give us some examples of ideologies?
I can give you maybe a couple. One would be in Christianity, where you have ideas, and then you have ideals. But when it becomes an ideology, it becomes you should not smoke, you should not drink, you should not dance. And so we begin to create an ideology of a dogma of how a person should live out those ideals.
Would you say, I'm going to bring up a couple things and we can cut whatever we don't like out.
Yeah.
Would you say going to church every Sunday was an idea that turned into an ideal, that turned into an ideology?
Yeah, I think that when
yes or no? Just yes or no, quick.
Yes and no.
But pick one and then follow the line, and then you can go back into it. But I think from the honest of like your human heart, do you think it was or not?
No, because it says, "Do not forsake the assembling of the brethren." As some have the habit of doing. So in the scriptures, it seems to talk about coming together as an ideal. When you're being judged on whether you show up every week, that becomes an ideology.
Right. So the Sunday thing, yes, is an ideology that.
Yes, it can. Yeah, I think across history, it probably falls more into ideology than it does ideal.
Yeah. But it's not a get out of church on Sunday free card.
No, because you're supposed to be living it out every single day.
Yes.
So Sunday isn't supposed to be the one day. So yeah, you're right.
And you're right.
It is an ideology.
But the reason I wanted you to stick one, I just like to see if you stick one and then you can always. But then you always show that how it's like it doesn't. Yeah. It's cyclical.
But you see, it's because ideals can become ideologies.
Yeah. But it doesn't. But ideologies are not always bad.
No, well, they're certainly not bad for the people who hold them.
Hold on. I want to start over because I want to cut that out because because I don't know. I don't want to be attacking Sundays either. Like I love church on Sundays, but I think so many things I dislike church on Sundays and I like church on Sundays and I dislike it when people are like, we can be the church when we're surfing. I'm like, shut your mouth. I'm just like, whatever, get out of here. But like people are like that. Christians can get like that. We're like, don't. Are we still going? What?
Are we still going?
I don't know. I'm just kind of talking trash right now.
I guess we should start over.
Should we start over?
Okay, let's start over.
Brooke's saying no. Brooke's saying no. Brooke's saying no. Keep going. Let's just keep going.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So it started back with ideologies. So so thank you for bringing.
We're going to keep all this in.
Yeah.
We're going to let you hear what we didn't intend for you to hear, because I do think.
I'm so sorry.
No. It's important because you're a kid who grew up in church.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out if I don't go, should I feel bad?
And it became an ideology because if you didn't go to church, you were bad.
Well, I was hanging out with one of my buddies. Yeah. I've recently reconnected with my buddies, Kevin. I have a photo of when we were little kids, like 4 years old. I mean,
wow.
Was I 4? Because it's crazy. He's 2 years younger than me. He looks bigger than me. Well, he is bigger than me. 6'2", I'm 5'10". But in the photo, I look like way younger than he does. Mm-hmm. We're at a birthday party, and I hadn't seen him in 20 years. And then I show up to Pepperdine. We're in a marketing class, and they do roll call on the first day of the class. Mm-hmm. I hear Kevin's name, he hears my name, and we both are like, what the heck? So now we've stayed friends 10 years later, and we've been hanging out. And it's just, we were talking about how we didn't go to church on Sundays. Our parents were at church every day.
That's right.
They would, I don't know what kind of thing you ran, but people were at different men's groups and women's groups, and people were at the church almost every night. And And we remember it being like so fun, but we both love the church now. We both love God. And it's just funny because we're laughing. We're like, yeah, we went our own ways and we found our way back. But like we always had this like really joyful like nature about like the church was kind of the center place of like of everything, of fun and hanging out, and we support each other's businesses and all these things. Anyways, keep going.
No, so
that was just a tangent.
No. So Christianity or church or religion can become an ideology. And so, you know, that you pray 5 times a day at a certain time in a certain direction becomes an ideology. Rather than believing in the principle of prayer, you start giving people the specific practice of prayer. And if you don't do it that way, then it's wrong. When you're praying through a rosary, it becomes an ideology rather than an idea or an ideal, a connection with God, intimacy. And
I really love this concept that you're talking about.
And
like,
so, I think this is where sometimes people don't understand me, is that I'm a person who really believes in ideas. And so when you have ideologies, you're afraid of ideas that violate the ideology.
You're also a preventer of ideology.
Yes.
Because you will create great, incredible patterns, and I've watched you pull them when you feel like they've become traditions.
Well, when they become an ideology and people start becoming legalistic around that way, that everyone has to live this way, yes, I try to destroy that.
On your own ideas, on things that and you're like, no, we're changing it now because it's become too religious.
Yeah, I remember early on in my life when people were really upset because I was changing things that had been done in the past. I remember saying in a meeting, I can't wait till the ideas are rooted in me, because then no one can feel I'm attacking someone else. I'm attacking my own ideas.
Right. Like the traditions and and isms and things.
Everybody starts traditions, and so now I get to just destroy the traditions that I started.
Yeah.
And so I'm not offending anyone else. Right?
I feel like there's only, I feel like that, just to make this personal, I feel like there's only like 2 traditions at Mosaic. Well, you say this, you say nothing is sacred except for like Jesus and the Bible. Because we've never been about buildings. We've never been about all the things that I think most churches have been about. But I like just fun things. Like I know for sure the Christmas tree is getting built every time, every Christmas that we're on Hollywood Boulevard in La Brea. That Christmas tree is getting built on that corner.
As long as we can breathe and we have access to this corner, that tree's going up.
And it's made out of like repurposed like crates, like broken down crates that are like, they take the wood and they build this like beautiful tree and they paint it white and they have a cross on the top. It's like beautiful. It's on Hollywood Boulevard in La Brea and it's become iconic. Right. The TMZ tour bus that like takes everyone stops and tells everyone this is Mosaic, this is the church on Hollywood Boulevard.
Okay. So I'm going to give you a controversial ideal that moves into an ideology.
Okay.
Pro-life, pro-choice.
Okay.
And an ideal is that every child that is in a mom's womb would actually be given a chance to live. An ideal is that every woman has the right and the freedom to make their own choice. Those are 2 ideals, and then they become ideologies. So then the person who says abortion is always wrong, their ideology doesn't allow them to even consider what happens during rape, incest, or the life and health of the mother. Right. Because the ideology is so rigid, it can't think outside of itself. And then you have the ideology on the other side where you have pro-choice. And so there are individuals even now who represent us in Washington who would say that abortion, even to the day or moment of birth, is the legitimate right of a woman, and that we should have no protections at all for that child in the womb. But if a woman is attacked and that child is killed, that other person can actually be charged for murder. And so the ideal becomes an ideology and doesn't even consider, well, wait a minute, forget the law. When do we become a species that has diminished the value of a human being? Because when you say, well, that's not a human, that's just not true, because the only thing we can actually give birth to are humans. And those are 2 ideals that, if left to themselves, I don't know how you could argue with those ideals. And they both have merit. But when they become ideologies, you can't even have a conversation anymore. And I was thinking about the other day how I'm not a huge fan of Karl Marx for a number of reasons. But Karl Marx had ideas and ideals. But he didn't really live in such a way where he had the opportunity to turn it into an ideology. He didn't have the power or the influence or maybe even the personal capacity. But Stalin turned the ideas and ideals of Marx into an ideology and forced an entire nation into an ideology of socialism, which brought devastating poverty and resulted in the death of millions of people who did not submit to the ideology. And so I think that it's really important for us to evaluate and examine ourselves and go, what are the ideas I have? What are the ideals that I hold? And what are the ideologies that I hold other people in contempt when they don't agree?
So how do you prevent your idea? So what you're saying, though, is that almost anything can go into an idea, into an ideal, into an ideology.
And the danger is that when you have power, you can turn your ideals into ideologies.
And then but what I also hear you saying is that the people who have the power are the followers, right? Because before Stalin, there was Karl Marx. And so in one way or another, Stalin was a follower of Karl Marx.
Yes.
So he had more power to integrate his ideals into ideologies. And so I think as a leader or as a thinker or as someone who is making actions, you have to think about how this will be taken into the next generation and how this will be turned into an ideology by someone either good or evil. Because I think the reality is that Karl Marx, I think if you took out the good or evil, if you just take the idea and him taking this idea of Karl Marx and then projecting it on his nation and his leadership, the idea was proven to be evil because of the way that it played out throughout history.
Yeah, you cannot say that the ideas of Marx have created a healthy ideology.
But I guess you could say the same thing about Christianity because evil men have taken the ideals of Jesus and have destroyed it.
Right, so you have that's a very good application. You have the ideas and ideals of Jesus, and then you have the ideology of Catholicism, the ideology of evangelicalism or Protestant, Christianity. And you have to look at those and go, wait a minute, does the ideology actually match the ideals, or is it now trying to impose a construct on people? And I want to apply this to even our present day, like conversation about consumerism and minimalism and McManus and our company, because I realize that a lot of the criticism is because people don't have ideals, they have ideologies. And if you do not do things the way they think it should be done, you're now evil.
But you would, like in layman's terms, that's saying you don't know why you do what you're doing. You just do what you're doing because other people have done it. You've been taught to do it this way.
And you've been taught that certain things are right and wrong and you don't even know why.
Right.
And it's why people are Republicans and Democrats and never even question whether they agree with everything the Republican Party says or whether they agree with everything the Democratic Party says, because they become ideological.
Yeah.
And rather than holding to ideals and saying everything should be evaluated, and I'm not going to hold on to an ideological view of the world.
I love West Wing. I love West Wing a lot.
Same.
But Brian, that's Brian Hartley. The reason why I like it is it's obviously written by Aaron Sorkin, and that was kind of like I think that was like his big breakout thing that made him very well known. But he's obviously like a liberal Democrat. I'm saying obviously, but at least he's writing from that perspective.
Sure.
What I do love is that how he portrays conservatives in one of two ways: just absolutely evil or completely fascinating, because he'll give them like a heroic narrative and like there's some of the greatest heroes in the show are some of the conservative characters. I find it really interesting because he's breaking down, because he'll build the whole ideal around a liberal, super socialist-based liberal president, J.D. Bartlett. I think it's J.D. Bartlett. And
Jed.
then, yeah?
Jed. Josiah. But they call him Jed.
No, it's
Bartlett.
Jed. It's Jedediah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's Josiah Bartlett. Yeah.
But they call him Jed.
They call him Jed. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Mr. President.
I'm in season 3, I still don't understand. But you have these really interesting Republican characters that he brings in, and you're just like, oh, the fact that he's able to write it from a place where a liberal would never, and I mean this like on both sides, liberal, conservative, where he knows that he's writing it in a way the left never sees conservatives, in a human, beautiful, like human, paradoxical nature, where he's going like, these are people who are born and bred Republican, born and bred Democrats, and they don't stray. And so he's like, and there's this collision of like in politics, and I think it's a really great show to watch because of the way that it breaks down certain ideals. And it's subtle if you're a conservative, and you might want to throw things at the TV all the time. But I do think it's a really interesting thing to have things in your life that are actually turning things upside down.
I do think it's interesting that in West Wing, he has a very strong perspective that the Democrats are the geniuses. They're the ones that are super educated. They're the ones that are intellectuals. They're brilliant. They're all Ivy League.
But then you get the...
Well, no, and then they're the ones that are supposedly the most aware of how the common everyday person sees and thinks and wants their lives played out. When they're actually not the ones who are in touch with the grassroots of everyday people. They have a view of how everyone should live, but they actually live in a very isolated bubble of elitism and intellectualism.
It's very interesting.
And
so then you have the firecracker lawyer who's the Republican that he hires in the second season, who's a conservative, and she's
I wish there was so much more that happened where Democrats and Republicans actually worked with each other and for each other. It would make the world so much better.
Okay, sorry, I've gone us off topic, but keep going. Go back to it.
Yeah, that's good.
I love this topic. I love the West Wing.
I do too.
Yeah. And I think we could do a whole episode on West Wing.
No, let's go. But the reason I was talking about that because there was two characters. I cannot remember names of literally anyone on shows. There was a gay Republican who is fighting with Josh Lyman, talking about why. Because Josh Lyman is going, how can you be a part of the Republican Party if you're gay and a Republican? And he's going, I do not make it about my sexuality, which is very interesting. And that would have been very on its head, especially 20 years ago when this show came out, to have a gay Republican in a White House behind the scenes argument of like this, and this. And he's like, you're a traitor because they don't believe in your sexuality. And he's like, no, you don't understand. I believe in the other part of the party. Like there's some different ideals. And then you have what's the lawyer's name? The blonde lawyer's name?
Ainsley Hayes.
Ainsley Hayes, who's just
Brian is a West Wing expert.
Firecracker, like on it, and she's just inside of like Sam's world of like she's on the lawyer, like the legal team, and the president hires her because she embarrasses one of the communications guys who's also a really intelligent lawyer and wipes him clean on this like CNN show. And then he's like, we need to hire her because she thinks differently than us and I want her protecting us. I do think we don't really have those things set up in our own lives. I find a lot of people, especially when I was living in Orange County for that year, so many Christians get fed whatever theology, ideology, and they don't actually realize that they have this ingrained, whether it's like segregation, how do you pluralize segregation? A segregated ideology of the way they see the world, the way they see other people. We cannot be friends with people who don't know God because our kids are in danger if they're around their kids. They don't have anyone else challenging their thinking. They would never watch a show like West Wing because I'm sure some pastor put a ban on it and they can't watch it. It's on their blocked list. And so like, how do we set ourselves up and posture ourselves to be able to properly challenge ideologies in our world, or even to identify ideologies in our world? Because I think so oftentimes we do things a certain way and we don't know why we do them, and we don't even know that we do them a certain way. We just are doing them.
Yeah. Oh, I can give you an example that you're not even aware of, but when we moved to LA, we were going to a church, and I think I said something one day about I'm going to Universal Studios, and one of the leaders said, oh, you're not allowed to go. And I said, what are you talking about? He goes, our pastor banned everyone from anything Universal. You can't go to Universal movie. You can't go to Universal Studios. I said, what are you talking about? Well, he goes, well, they produced The Passion of the Christ.
Passion of the Christ?
The Last Temptation of Christ.
I'm like, Passion of the Christ?
Sorry.
Literally took everyone to go see.
Way before that. The Last Temptation of Christ.
Yes.
And I thought, you're going to live in LA and boycott Universal because of a movie they made.
Yeah.
And
we end up boycotting the people we're sent to reach.
Yeah, and I thought, this is so stupid. And of course, I went to Universal. That's when an ideal becomes an ideology. An idea moves to an ideology. When you start telling people how to live.
The other one was voting. Voting in the church. You were telling me this story last night. You were part of the church and you had to literally hold a vote to stop voting inside the church because you were like, voting isn't actually biblical. And so one of the young guys was like, what was the argument? It's like, why are we voting to vote?
No, I came in and he goes, why are we not voting anymore? And I said, well, let's look at the Bible. Voting isn't actually biblical.
Yeah.
And then after he looked at it, he goes, then why did you vote tonight? I said, because this church votes, so I had to have you vote to not vote anymore.
But it was like such a great, like, real conversation because he was like headstrong one way, and then he was like, okay, headstrong the other way.
Completely.
But how do we not? Why do we become so thirsty for ideologies and not ideals and ideas?
Because ideologies allow us to not have to think. Ideologies do our thinking for us. And so they make the world simpler. They make the world easier. They uncomplicate things. They eliminate uncertainty. And so the moment you move toward an ideology, not only is your life certain, but now you have a measure by which you can judge other people. And the reason this came to my mind is when I was looking at the criticisms for starting my line and the price points and everything like that, we didn't get any criticism from people who did not believe in Jesus. Like, all the criticism came from Christians. And so I started thinking about what are the ideologies that are shaping this level of criticism. And there's several of them because they kept pointing to Jesus, but that's why I actually went back and started doing some, revisiting of Marx, because I thought, I think these Christians think they're reflecting Jesus. They're actually reflecting Marx, and they don't realize that their ideology isn't shaped by the Bible at all.
So you're saying these Christian conservatives actually have socialist ideals?
They don't know that they do.
Right.
But the ideology has been shaped by other forces, and certainly not by like Jesus. And I think some of what was more interesting to me, because I'm 62 and I've lived a long life, and I just can't worry about what someone else is saying about me that doesn't know me. And
I'm 32. I'm super worried. Talk to me. Talk to me. No. Super worried. Let's go.
But let me just maybe address one of the issues. When someone said, well, first of all, I saw this guy and his color, it does matter. So I'm going to say a white guy who's a musician who looks very mid-America and very almost like a classic hipster look. And he posed something as if he were black.
Yeah.
And I thought
it was a very racist comment.
It was such a racist comment, and because his assumption as a white middle-class American hipster Christian is that it's black people that can't afford my line. And I was when I read his comment, I thought he doesn't realize that he's attacking a price point while advocating a racism that's far more destructive. And my response to him was, hey, you don't need a new hoodie, you need a new mindset. Because I realized that there's a mindset here. All right, so let's talk about economic cash flow just for a minute. T-shirt. If I sold a T-shirt for, let's say, $25 or a hoodie for $60, which is very common, right?
Yeah.
Then no one would criticize me from this mindset, this ideology, because they would go, oh, okay, that's the price I can afford. That makes it available to everyone. Except there's several things here. One is that if you're making material to access the finances of the poor, you're actually taking money from the poor and extricating it up to you.
Explain that, in the practical way. Because what you're meaning is that in order to make a garment as cheap, to make it affordable.
No, there's two sides of this. No, first I'm talking about the customer.
Okay.
See, if you're making things for a customer that doesn't have a lot of income.
Right, it's at the entry-level price point.
You're actually pulling money from them up to you so you can make more money.
To me, to them.
Yeah, whoever's selling it for
ain't me.
Whoever's selling it for $25, you're taking money from people who are poor. You think you're doing a positive thing, but you're actually creating a company to make more money for yourself from poor people. Right. And then secondly, to make that T-shirt for $25, you're making that T-shirt in Bangladesh or Pakistan, and you're probably supporting the ethic of children working in sweatshops, because you cannot make that T-shirt and sell it for $25 without taking advantage of someone who's not getting paid for their work.
Read Shoe Dog, Phil Knight. It's a very current depiction of what was going on in factories within Nike in the last 60, 70 years.
So then you have American millennials going, I think it's wrong to charge $180.
Right.
But we're also against child slave labor and sweatshops, but we don't want to pay the difference to make sure that no one is taken advantage of.
It is the same thing. Is the same thing in an idea when people go, I'm against illegal immigration, but I like cheap groceries. That was Mariah McManus giving us a cameo. She doesn't want to come in here, so she walked on the far side of that hallway, so she didn't have to come in here. But
I'm going to keep going.
But would you agree or disagree with my statement?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
This is decide which ideal you want, because it's going to shape your ideology.
Right.
You cannot say I'm against child labor and sweatshops, and I'm against higher prices for products I have to buy. You are one or the other, and don't pretend that you're for an equal wage and a fair wage for people everywhere in the world, and then get angry because you can't get it for $25 or $30. Secondly, I didn't make things to get people who are struggling every day to buy my stuff on purpose.
Which is a weird projection that people place on you because it doesn't go like, hey, you've outpriced us. It goes, you are stealing from the poor. And I'm like, no.
I made sure the poor could not afford what I was selling. Actually,
no. Well, that was not what I was looking to say. But what you actually did is you made sure poor people were making your clothes. You actually paid people a fair wage to make your clothes.
That's right. There's nobody in a sweatshop making my stuff.
No.
And so, but it's also that I'm not trying to find a strategy to get rich on poor people. Secondly, if I had made a product for the middle class.
So we're having two different conversations because you're having conversations as an owner of a business, and I'm trying to also show the side from the consumer.
Yes.
So like, if you're buying this stuff from these places, you have to understand what you're buying. And then you're saying, as an owner of a business and a creator of clothing, if I make things at this price point, you have to understand what you're buying.
Yeah, and you don't have to agree with me, but I want you to understand the ideology behind your criticism.
Right.
And you have to accept it.
I also think most people don't really know like the apparel industry and know how things are made.
But I do.
When you buy socks, 32 pairs of socks from Costco from a company that makes them in Pakistan, you have to understand, you should Google what a fair wage is in Pakistan, because it's a fair wage might be $1. It might be 50 cents US. So it's like you have to justify in your own mind what that fair wage is, and you have to understand it, right? I'm not saying that everything is like that, but a lot of it's like that.
Yes. So secondly, if I'd made things, let's say for the middle class, which I haven't really made a lot for what I would call people middle income.
But Bat already does. We release normal hoodies and sweatshirts and coffee mugs.
Everyone in that middle income world can buy Battle Ready. They can buy church merch from Mosaic because we're making it accessible to pretty much everyone. And because it's really just about the brand loyalty.
Right, and people wanting to, like us wanting people to connect and access it.
I consciously did not create a line that would compete with the customer for Battle Ready and for Mosaic and for all the other churches that create church merch and everything like that, because I did not want to go in competition with the church fan kind of customer base. By the way, when you make a product for that base, you're just moving money sideways.
For the middle class.
Middle class.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a middle class person selling it to a middle class person.
Right.
And you're just moving money sideways. You're not moving it down, you're not moving it up. Ironically, the wealthy and those people with a large amount of discretionary income, they're actually the target group for my line, because I'm actually trying to draw wealth to buy the product. So these are people who spend this kind of money without even blinking an eye. I'm actually pulling money from the rich back into the middle class, back into those who are struggling in the working class everyday people. So I've helped a dozen plus people have income just by starting this company. And it's being paid for first by me because I'm the one putting all the investment in. And then it's being recompensated by the rich who are buying beautiful things because it's something they can enjoy. And
So what you're saying is that it's not trickling up, it's actually trickling down.
it's pulling money down.
Right. And so, which is an interesting idea because I don't think it's a concept most people don't understand in the situation that not all luxury goods are made like this, but when you're buying a luxury good from like a startup, from a new company, 99.9%, our focus is on craftsmanship.
Yeah.
Because if we don't make something well, people will not continue to buy at the price point at which we're selling.
That's right.
Which is why if something breaks, send it back to us. We will fix it. We'll help repair it. There's like things that you do in the beginning of like a high-end company because things will break, things will fall apart, things will happen because it's what we're doing. We're building. But with that, like let's walk through the list because the guy who made the jackets in the factory and his team, fair wage in Los Angeles.
Yes.
Factory here
Everything's
locally.
been made here in LA.
The head of production who was furloughed from his main job, his partner who printed on things, who made his wife, who made labels, who like starting a business.
Yeah.
So at the middle, and then you're paying models, you're paying friends to put clothes on because all the models were friends, and then you're paying the photographer, and then you're paying the web team, and you're paying the XYZ. You have built things, and what people don't understand is that you've hired a bunch of people who did not have jobs or people who are really great at their job. And so you've actually helped build the economy with the trickle down,
Right.
the pulling of the finances down, not the pulling of the finances up.
Right. And I have the capacity to do that. And so if I don't do that, that actually allows money to remain static at the top without ever pulling down. One of our friends, or one of your best friends, Matt, his dad builds houses.
Really nice house.
And we went out and saw one of the houses he's building out in Malibu. I don't know what that house is worth.
I mean,
$10 million or
it was insane.
it's beautiful.
Yeah.
But everyone there working on that house could not afford that house.
We were not even building the house. We could not
We couldn't
afford the
afford
house.
Sorry. And everyone, in fact, almost everyone I met was an ethnic minority.
Right.
Where English was their second language. And so when you're looking at that house being built, you think, oh, that's horrible that someone's building a $10 million house, because that's the way we've been taught. And I'm going, the fact that person is building a $10 million house, it means that an endless number of people are getting work. And they're going to have income for their family, and they're going to have money for Christmas and money to put food on their table and money to pay their rent or buy their house, because someone who has wealth is actually activating that wealth. And one of the things that really struck me with Marx is that he saw surplus as evil.
Yes.
And was really trying to figure out how to eliminate surplus. And what we need to realize is that even Marx understood that without the middle class and without the rich, the ideals of socialism wouldn't work because you need them to finance it.
Marx is the servant in the parable who put the money in the ground and buried it.
Yeah, that was one thing that really struck me, is I couldn't really identify a single job that Karl Marx ever took in his life.
Yeah.
And then he spent a lot of his life being financed by rich people. When he did get financed by rich people, he would put his kids in private school.
And so
So there's an interesting juxtaposition there in terms of ideals and ideologies. See, because even Karl Marx did not live out his ideals, and he certainly didn't actually even turn it into an ideology. He had ideas, but he didn't really live the ideals because they didn't match the life he wanted. And what I'm really addressing is this idea that creating wealth is evil, and that generating a company is somehow unbiblical or unlike Jesus.
I think the big, and I want you. Do you have more? Do you have more
go
than
ahead.
saying that? Because I think the big challenge is for people to break through, which is that you're a pastor starting a luxury brand. That's the big.
But why
is the what is it? The straw in their
Right.
the log in their eye.
Right, but why is it acceptable for a pastor to start a a junk line.
Well,
I don't know what the right phrase for it would be. Like, so if look,
the irony is that
Yeah.
one of the people that were criticizing you sells houses, and that is far more expensive than the jackets that we sell. Houses are,
he was saying, how dare you make jackets that the everyday person can't afford? And then I just checked his Instagram. I'm going, you're selling houses that people can't afford,
which is the irony because you're putting them in debt. To
and living a lifestyle that most people can't afford, but I don't.
And
judge
posting
you.
about it. Oh, the selfies of the cars and the houses.
But that's the whole point. I don't judge that person because I'm not advocating an ideology. What I'm saying is, you need to
Sentenced to
step
5
back
years.
and look and see if you actually have an ideology that makes you dogmatic and rigid and makes you judgmental.
Yeah,
and then you're imposing your ideology on Jesus.
Yes, because the best part is when they can't win the argument, they don't apologize. They just start quoting verses that they don't understand, which I always find fascinating. But but this is what I want you to address it. You're a pastor starting a luxury line. Why? And why is it not wrong biblically?
Well, first of all, if you actually read through the whole Old Testament, almost every single person that God used to mark human history
We
was a
all
person
know
of
that
great...
people who use Twitter and Instagram to bash us do not read the Bible. They only read the quotes.
Yeah.
They read the headlines.
Yeah.
They don't actually know the Bible. That's the best part.
I was struck how when
They might read it, they just don't know it.
when that woman came and broke the alabaster jar
Yes.
that was worth an entire year's salary and anointed Jesus' feet, he didn't use that moment to teach them about economics and waste and surplus. And instead, Jesus taught them about love and gratitude and worship.
But what did the disciples say in that moment?
Yeah, it's funny. The disciples were the ones, and the Pharisees, that cared about the economics of it. And Jesus was the one who never even saw the economics of it. He saw the motive of the woman's love and compassion and generosity. And the moment you try to turn Jesus into an economist, you've actually become a disciple of Karl Marx, not of Jesus of Nazareth.
So now the argument is, no, but she gave it to him for free. And the argument that I would use is like, well, Jesus turned water into wine. It was the best wine. But like, no, but Jesus gave it away for free.
Right? She gave it away for free after having earned it from a year of prostitution.
Okay, that's awkward.
It is awkward. And what we need to realize is that if modern day Christians were in that moment, they would condemn her for using wealth improperly gained for a display of love or sacrifice and generosity. And I'm sitting here looking and going, the spirit of Jesus is so different than the spirit of Christianity. And he doesn't even judge her for how she bought that.
She got it.
And we judge each other for everything that the other person does.
I
think it's a terrible indictment on our spirit. And so I'm going to tell you.
I want to tell a personal story.
Sure.
They're two moments in our lives in the last few years that I like, that miracles. I would say they're miracles because they're just such beautiful, fun moments that like how else do you explain them? But I think they're important to talk about. We don't really ever talk about it because we're not those people, but we kind of are now. So let's talk about it. One of them being, we rode on a friend of yours, a bunch of your friends, but not a bunch, but like a few of your friends have private planes. And we were in New York the last time, and one of your friends texted you, and it was like on the day of your release of The Way of the Warrior, which was like kind of a funny thing. Me and you were staying in New York in the city. We were meeting with your new publishers, which was like really cool for the book that's coming out next year. And your friend was like, "Hey, we're in New York, let's hang out." And then we like couldn't hang out, and then they were like, "Change your flight or come fly with us." And you were, like,
but I didn't realize they meant on their
private
plane.
But
so I already have my tickets. And
I don't know. We're like in the lobby or something, and we're like having lunch, and you're like, "I don't want to change my flights to fly with them. That's annoying."
Yeah.
I was like, "Dad, they don't fly like us. They're on their plane. They want us to go on the plane with them. Say yes, or I'll never forgive you. I want to go on the plane." And so, and they're like the best ever. So we go on the plane, and when we're landing, they're like the most also they're very, very intelligent. Mm-hmm. They're like, "Look, do not post that you're on the plane. We would just never want you to get bashed. Like, we're like really private about. Even our own success, we don't want you to get bashed. And because we were taking some photos after, because they were like, take photos, like this is so fun, and like let's do it. And we were all like taking photos together. And it was like a funny thing.
We can't believe we're on a private.
It was also like the sickest plane ever. Like I've been on a few. This was the coolest one I've ever been on. But the point of that was attached to this. I'm living in a house I cannot afford, out of the generosity of someone who owns the house and has rented it to me at such an incredible price, and I'm living inside of the miracle of his generosity. This is the point, and that's the phrase I'm trying to get to, the miracle of other people's generosity. I hate that we have to hide the miracle from people who can't see it, because the miracle is not that I own a plane, and if I did, amazing, and I would use like a school bus. I would have people on that plane all the time because that's the way I would live my life, and I do live my life. But it is tragic and tragedy that we're not able to be louder about our moments of joy, moments of fun, moments of random miracles in our life, because like we like aren't on that level. But I'm living inside of a miracle of someone else's generosity, and instead of living in this house and being like, I can't believe he owns this $6 million house that I'm staying in right now. I'm like, no, I'm just gonna invite all of my friends over all the time and have dinners there every night and let people receive the miracle that I've received and be a part of it, right? Yeah. It's a mentality thing. Instead of getting jealous, bring joy to other people's life. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Because like those are two moments where I'm like, no, I wish they didn't have to warn us not to post the photo because of what people will say about us. Yeah. I wish people just realize like, no, they're living a life with so much sacrifice. And there's also really bad moments when you get to have these fun ones. Yeah. It just makes it that much more.
And both those families you named are so incredibly wealthy, and they're the most generous, kind, gracious, Christ-like people.
And I hope it's okay that we're talking about it, because we didn't ask for it. And when the guy who's our close friend now, your close friend, and a friend of mine as well, like took me to the house, I had like sit up like 3 days working on the new Erwin and Aaron McManus project, and you were like, buddy, this is crazy. And I was like, yeah, I know. Is this even real? And I like wasn't able to show joy because I was just so exhausted. I was like, I'm so happy right now, but I can't even smile. And I told you, I said I had been having this conversation with God where I'm like, I'm really mad at you. And I felt like it was this moment in Malachi where he says, throw open the storehouses and test me in this. There's no way you can outgive God. And I just had this moment where I was like, I told God I was mad at him, and he said, let me just remind you how much you mean to me. And even though it was like an economic value in this moment, I was like, it had nothing to do with the economics. It had nothing to do with the fact that I couldn't afford this. It had everything to do with the fact that this would not have ever happened if God hadn't done it. Right? Yeah. And I was living inside that miracle of someone else's generosity, and it's now up to me to say yes to it. And I think that is the mentality that people miss, is they go, God is trying to do some things in your life that are so far beyond your ability to see it, but you say no because you're so worried criticizing someone else's life that you're not actually seeing what God is trying to do in your own. And that is the thing that is heartbreaking to me with people that criticize us for certain things. Because I'm like, you don't know our hearts. You just see a price tag, and then you start throwing judgments at us. Right.
So here are a couple of ideological red flags. When you judge other people for living their life differently than the way you live your life. Okay. When you are certain that other people are evil when they've made things unaffordable to you. And
it's crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting. When someone Instagrammed and said, "Hey, are your products affordable to the common person?" And my immediate thought was, I didn't create common pieces. Like I wasn't targeting quote common. And that's the problem with Christianity, is that we just target garbage and common, and we destroy anyone who wants to create something that's uncommon and unique. There's this family that's incredibly influential in the world of art and theater and everything. A lot of things in LA are named after them, and their whole family. And
a lot of buildings.
And we were invited to. They do these conversations. They invite like 12 people to their house from all over the world, and then they pick a topic, and then you talk for the next 3 or 4 hours around dinner in that topic. The first time I was invited to their house, the question was, can beauty save the world?
Right.
And that's where I made some friends, I got to know some people, and I was always shocked I was invited to this home, and they love doing these like intellectual festivals, where you're just having these private talks, and so I started dialoguing with them when I started the brand, and I said, I'll never forget what Howard told me over 10 years ago when I started my first fashion company. He said, don't make Christian crap. And and I said, well, my goal is not to make crap, and I'm going to do the best I can.
Yeah.
And so this time I wanted them to know, and I noticed that he started following us. And
that's cool.
And the only way you're going to ever get an engagement with people who are incredibly successful and have incredible affluence and have the opportunity to make a huge difference in the world is to create things that impress and surprise and astonish them. And what a lot of people don't realize is the reason we have such little influence in that percentage of the culture that influences everything is that we are happy with $25 t-shirts that make us feel like we're Jesus, rather than pressing ourselves against all the criticism to create astonishing things that are not affordable to the common, but that actually pull people in because you've created something extraordinary, something beautiful, something that makes that reflects, I think, the imagination and creativity and genius of God.
Yeah.
And I thought this was an important conversation, because I wonder how many of us settle for the ordinary because there's no criticism there, rather than press to the extraordinary, to go against the grain and to take whatever heat may come.
Turn up the heat, said Erwin Raphael McManus. I love this conversation. It's been going on for a while, and so I think we should wrap this up. But also, I just think that you kind of nailed it on the head, and I love that you broke down this idea of ideas, ideals, and ideologies. I think this is something we need to come back to as well, because I think I think that's like the filter and the thing that we need to cross-check everything by. Is this an idea, ideal, and ideology? And should we undo the ideology? Should we press forward towards the ideal? And should we continue to have ideas? Mm-hmm. That's, if there's anything that I think wraps up what this podcast is all about, is that idea, that construct. Question everything and think freely. And so I want to wrap up this podcast. Thank you so much I feel like I got to have the best. I just got to go to school right now.
It's great to be together.
Oh, it's so good to be together. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. We're getting so close. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas.
Yes.
And that you enjoy your family and friends and loved ones.
Yes. And we are taking a few weeks off. And so this is the last podcast in December. This is December 18th. And we will see you in the new year in 2020. And
2021.
Oh my goodness, 2020.2.
I don't want to see you in 2020. I don't want Groundhog Day.
I don't want this again. Sure. Oh my gosh, what if it started over?
2021, here you come.
2021, we believe you're coming, and we're diving towards you. A couple things. If you're missing the podcast, we're probably going to play some older episodes that maybe you haven't heard. But we also invite you to church on Sunday at mosaic.org/live. We're doing a Home for the Holidays series, and it's really awesome. So join us for that. Also, Merry Christmas, and we're so grateful that you listen. You can rate and review this podcast on iTunes. You can share it on Spotify, and you can watch it on YouTube. We are wearing the same clothes as last episode with a new hoodie and a new flannel. So I'm excited. I'm flying to New York right now, and it's going to be cold.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Bye.